Truth Unveiled here, and today I have some interesting stuff to share with you. We're going to be talking about the UN United Nations, and we're going to be talking about what they're going to be doing in the coming days, in the coming week ahead. Now, I was not expecting to do this video today. In fact, I was not expecting to do any of these videos for a very long time, but Yahuwah had other plans indeed. It's very important that you folks know about what's going on in the times that we're in the world around you. Now, I know for those of you who may be new to this network or not used to this network, once again, this was a channel that was originally terminated on YouTube back in 2021 that had over 360,000 subscribers and 60 million views. It's important that I distinguish that so that people who might be stumbling across this information for the first time understand the history and origins of the channel. And for those of you who are returning to the channel, welcome. It's great to have you. You're probably wondering, well, Truth Unveiled, where have you been and why have you been silent these past few months, if not years overall, compared to back in 2016 and 2017 when the channel was more active? And the answer to that is, all I can really say is Yahuwah's perfect timing. There is a time to be silent, a time to be still, and a time to speak, as even scripture talks about. But getting into the video, we're going to be talking about Summit of the Future, our common agenda. As you can see right here, starting on September 20th through the 21st is Action Days, and then there's an actual summit that will be held in New York on September 22nd through September 23rd. Now pay careful attention to those dates because we're going to talk about why they're significant and important in a moment to come. Now it says here, Summit of the Future Action Days. The Summit of the Future Action Days will focus on multi-stakeholder partnerships and action, paving a way towards the next chapter of multilateralism that is more inclusive and networked. Now that all sounds fine and good, but what's the real agenda here? And later on in the video, we're actually going to be going to the microsite, and I will link this stuff in the description box. But then it goes on to say here that the Summit of the Future, or Pact for the Future, will produce an intergovernmentally negotiated, action-oriented pact for the future with chapters on sustainable development. Haven't we talked about this before? Sustainable development and the UN Agenda 2030 and financing for development. International peace and security. Where have we heard this before when they talk about peace and security? Science, technology, and innovation and digital cooperation, youth and future generations, and transforming what they call global governance, or the plane indeed. And the plain truth is, are you ready for what's to come? Because if not, then you might want to stay tuned to this. Because here, before we go over all of the stuff we just read on the UN, I wanted to take you to this website here, the UNRIC website, the Regional Information Center for Western Europe. And this is what they had to say on this event that will be held. Now, just pay careful attention to the language and how this relates to the you-know-what. Because it says major so-called global, but are we on a globe or a plane? That's for you to decide. But major shocks in recent years, including this, including that, and this as well, but is it really planets or planes, among others, have challenged our international institutions. Pay careful attention to, once again, problem, reaction, solution, because who really caused this? Who's really behind this? Who's really behind that? That's for you to decide. Could it be the same organizations that's behind this? Could it be the Bilderbergers? Could it be the Rothschilds? Could it be all of these different corporations and entities and alphabet soups that you might not be aware of? Could Big Brother be watching you? Are fusion centers real? That's for you to decide. But then it goes on to say unity around our shared principles and common goals is crucial and urgent. So once again, notice how they make this a worldwide problem, that this is your problem, this is my problem, this is our problem, and we need to come together to solve said problem. Problem, reaction, solution. So then it says the Summit of the Future, September 2024, is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to enhance cooperation on critical challenges and address gaps in what they call global governance. It will reaffirm existing commitments, including to the what? Sustainable Development Goals in the UN Charter, and move towards a reinvigorated multilateral system better positioned to impact people's lives positively. But anything they say is the exact opposite, because what are some of those sustainable developmental goals? Now, we don't have time to go over all of these goals in particular, but I will link this in the description box below so that you can see it. But again, pay careful attention to the agenda because there is an agenda behind this because they want you to think that the 17 goals is, oh yeah, eradicate poverty. Oh yeah, eradicate hunger. Oh yeah, give good health and well-being. But the reality though is that really what they're trying to do? Because let me ask you this question. Who are the ones behind poverty in the first place? Who are the ones behind the reason why the world is starving the way that it is even right now? And good health, but they've been promoting the you know what, and we've talked about it, and you can see that video on the Rumble channel. We've already talked about the ingredients in the you know what that they've been promoting themselves, that they claim is safe and effective and everything. But is it DNA altering? And does it have DNA altering effects when it comes to those things? I don't think so. Yet more than 80% of the world has already taken it. So that doesn't sound like good health and well-being to me. And when they talk about quality education, what are they really talking about? Indoctrination, indeed. And then they talk about gender equality, clean water and sanitation, all of these things that make you think that, oh yeah, this is a really great thing. And oh yeah, they're coming together to do this. But is it really? And when they say peace, justice, and strong institutions, who are they really talking about? And when they say climate action, is there really anything that needs to be changed in the first place? What is it leading up to? The NWO, the OWG. That is exactly what this is leading up to. And again, they're conditioning everyone to get ready for it. But there is even a bigger agenda going on because they talk about here a fundamental rethink. Again, all this mind control. They want to condition other people's minds into thinking that yes, there is a big problem. Yes, poverty is a big problem and it's all our problem. And we need to come together and merge together as a one world system in order to fight this problem together. What do you think that's going to lead up to in the coming future potentially? So again, they already listed some of their bullet points. I will link this in the description box below. But here I want to get to the actual reports and where you can actually find this stuff. Like I said, I will link all of this in the description box below so that you can take a look at it on your own time. But it says impact for the future. What will it bring? What will it deliver? Isn't it interesting that word deliver, when you unscramble it, you get the word devil? Wow, that's not a surprise or a coincidence, is it? Very interesting and suspicious indeed. But then it goes on to say how this is a chance to get back on track. Oh, get back on track. How? By merging everything together, an opportunity for initiatives and commitments from a wide array of stakeholders. Again, tackle emerging threats. What emerging threats do they need to tackle? Why do they keep mentioning emerging threats as if there's some big threat that they're either keeping from us or maybe they're not keeping from us because your president's already told you what these threats are. And could these threats be potential aliens and alien invasions? Is that what they could potentially be preparing for? Now, am I saying some big event is going to happen this September 22nd and this September 23rd that, oh, there's going to be some alien invasion? No, I'm not saying that. This is not this type of channel. This is not a predictions type of channel. So please take that elsewhere. I'm simply warning you about what is going on and turning your attention to these things if you're not already aware of and keeping you awake, alert, and aware of the world around you. Now, of course, they're going to be telling you that it's about climate and the environment and so-called climate change, which is a hoax, by the way. They're going to tell you that it's going to be about financing, international peace and security, science, technology, and innovation, youth and future generations. However, there is something more sinister going on here. There is something very nefarious indeed about this agenda because they also tell you over here that they're talking about a collective security system. What does that sound like? Haven't we talked about on this network in previous videos about what? About spying, about technology, about how they can spy on you through your phone. They can spy on you when you're walking on the streets through streetlights. They can spy on you every single way in which you go. And not only can they spy on you, but they're trying to determine whether or not you are going to be cooperative to the government and to the system come the OWG, come the NWO. And if you're not cooperative, well then guess what? They already have the hidden prisons and camps ready to go indeed. And of course, it's going to be everyone's problem. And what do they say? Increase national whole of society prevention efforts. So again, military spending. Oh, more spending and funding for the military. What does that sound like to you? Better protection of civilians in armed conflict and accountability for atrocity crimes and violations? What does that sound like? Oh, to better protect people, don't you have to employ more military, more tanks and stuff? Could that be potentially leading up to a one world military, maybe? And then they say disarmament and arms control efforts. Oh, so basically to make people as defenseless as possible. And then they even say right here, counter T efforts, but why are they making efforts in this? Who's the one causing all of this in the first place? Could it be the very ones who are making this document? That's for you to decide. And what's even worse is now they're conditioning the youth, because now they want the youth to partake in this. Now they're conditioning your children. They're conditioning your teens now. They're conditioning them into going along with this system. It honestly reminds me of that movie, The Fifth Wave, that came out in 2016. I know we talked about it before long, long ago when the movie first came out, but basically in that movie, it shows and depicts what? Children that are becoming what? Enlisted with the military come time for war indeed. And some of you out there might be like, oh, but that's just a movie. Oh, that would never happen in real life. They're putting the truth right in front of you. Because if they put it in a movie, they know you won't believe it unless your eyes are open to the truth and you're seeing what's right in front of you and are not being hesitant about what you are seeing, but are actually seeing it with both your eyes open. Now, this is another document that comes from the UN or United Nations General Assembly. Notice how their logo looks like the flat earth? Huh, very interesting and suspicious indeed. Again, this is what I'm talking about, putting the truth right in front of you. But do you see it? Or are you still in denial about it? But anyway, this goes over the draft decision submitted by the President of the General Assembly, or should I say ID Serpent. Scope of the Summit of the Future. Once again, putting the truth right in front of you. So it goes on to talk about how they are dividing this into 5 sections, as we've talked about before. But notice how it also mentions the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Wow, what does that sound like? The NWO, the OWG. And no, there is nothing OG about this. But again, this is a document that basically reiterates what they already talked about. The reason I wanted to link this is because, again, this is rooted in the 2030 agenda. And why is this so important? Is because this is about world control. This is about mind control. This is about controlling you in any way, shape, and form possible. And it is time for you now to get out of the matrix and wake up to the truth that's right in front of you. Because the only way to get out of a lie is to see who the liars really are. And the only way to get out of a lie is to see and accept and admit that you've been lied to and see the truth that's right in front of you. Now, once again, I'm here at the actual website. So this is from summitofthefutureun.org. We're not going to go over all of this for the sake of time, but they go over the overview, agenda, when and where, FAQs, and documents that you can take a look at. So you can see their overview of events. So they tell you what the summit is. Again, this is stuff we've already gone over, so I'm not going to go over it too much. They tell you who can participate and things like that. And they also tell you some of the side events by UN member states, UN entities, relevant international organizations. Also, when it says international organizations, who do you think this could be talking about? Could it potentially be talking about the Bilderbergers? Could it be potentially be talking about the CFR or the Council of Foreign Relations and all of these other alphabet soups and private corporations and entities and businesses that are coming together to talk about how they can enslave you even more? Because if you really think that you're free in America, it's time to think again. If you really think you're free in Europe or anywhere else in the Western world, it's time to think again. Because the reality is, you're not. Because if you were, then why do you have to borrow money from a bank in order to own a house and a so-called mortgage? Do you really think that land belongs to you when legally, in the event of a national emergency, your presidents have already signed off decrees and declarations when it comes to executive orders giving the government legal right of your property, so-called property, and household and everything else that belongs to the government? So once again, I ask you, are you really free here? Are you really free? That is the question for you to decide. But here we are at the actual website again, Pact for the Future. As you can see here, the world is at a crossroads. Now notice, isn't it interesting? They show and depict all of these different things. They show and depict all of these disasters and stuff like that, huh? And it happens to coincide with September 23rd, because that's what I want you to pay attention to, is the whole September 23rd. It goes on to say, rapid advances in technology and science hold the promise of a better, more peaceful and prosperous future for people and the plane. And once again, they talk about their sustainable development goals once again. Let's choose to change course. So again, offers a chance to commit to bold new solutions. Doesn't that sound like the NWO to you? What solutions do you think they're talking about? Problem reaction solutions. Aren't they the ones that caused all the problems in the first place? Once again, notice how they say together, let's shape that better future. Because again, it's all of us that have to come together. It's all of us that have to merge these religions together to create that OW religion. It's all of us that have to come together and get rid of the dollar to create that OW currency. Why do you think they're making everything cashless now? The reason it's becoming a cashless society is because they need to control you more and more. They need to be able to track what you're spending, what funds you're spending, where you're spending, and where you actually are in order to monitor you to see if you're going to comply with the NWO when it gets here. When the satanic reign starts and when Satan falls down from the Shamayim or heaven, just like the scripture talks about, will you be ready or will you think it's a myth? And notice towards the bottom of this where it says 193 countries, 1,000 plus delegates, 3.5 days, one world. One world. Do you see the agenda that's right in front of you? I do, because is it a surprise or a coincidence that all of this is taking place and coinciding 23 years after 9/11? Huh, isn't Hollywood or Hollywood, aren't they so fascinated and intrigued with this number 23? They even cultivated a movie dedicated to this number. Not only that, but you see this number everywhere. Didn't Miley Cyrus dedicate a song to this number? Didn't Michael Jordan have this number? Why do you think they're so obsessed with this number? Could there be something really interesting to it indeed? Isn't it interesting that when you look at the date 9/11/2001, that when you add 9 plus 11 plus 2 plus 0 plus 0 plus 1, isn't it interesting that you get the number 23 and it just so happens to be 23 years after 9/11? Huh, very interesting and suspicious indeed that they would conveniently pick that day, September 23rd, to have this event on. Not only that, but for those of you who followed the channel extensively back in 2017, then you remember that we talked about extensively Revelation 12 and the Revelation 12 sign that occurred as of September 23rd, 2017. This was Revelation 12 sign that occurred in the sky. You could read it right here where it talks about the woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And we talked extensively about this and the significance of this, the spiritual significance of this. Isn't it interesting that this upcoming September 23rd in the Gregorian count will be exactly 7 years following that? Very interesting and suspicious indeed. We already talked about on this network and channel when it came to the eclipse and the 7 years with that, with the first eclipse occurring in America in 2017, the second one occurring earlier this year in 2024, how it makes the X marks the spot, 400. We related that to the 400 years. Folks, this stuff is prophetic, and it's important that you're seeing this with both your eyes open. We're not making or placing any dates on anything or setting any dates. We're just telling you that it's important that you're focused and paying attention to the world around you, and that we're warning and sounding the alarm about this stuff. This is not a joke. This is real, and it's important that you are understanding this. Now, it's also interesting too how all of this coincides with the appointed times. Now, for those of you who are already observing trumpets, it might already be trumpets where you are, depending on where you are in the world. For those of you who are wondering, this is the scriptural appointed times. Again, if you're new to this network or wondering about this, you could take a look at our fall appointed times video, or you could take a look and browse around the videos on this network and also some of the videos on the Rumble channel as well to get caught up to speed on what these appointed times even are, how to observe them, and why we arrive to the dates that we do. But this year, trumpets will begin actually real soon. In some places, it's already begun. And again, we've talked about on this network extensively why these three appointed times, trumpets, Day of Atonement, and Tabernacles, for our time, why they are so important and so significant, and how they relate to the end times when it talks about when it comes to Yahusha the Messiah, the real restored name of the Messiah, not JC. And we've done videos on that on the Rumble channel that you can look for if you already are not familiar with what I'm talking about. How these appointed times coincide with not only the salvation of the real Yasharal, or what they call Israel, who are so-called black people or Negroes who've been scattered across the four corners of the world, but most specifically in America today. Not only how it has to do with the salvation of them. And yes, before you start asking, white people can be saved too, and other nations can be saved too, as long as they graft under their covenant or brayath of Yahuwah through Yahusha and keep the law, statutes, and commandments. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, you can take a look at some of the other videos, the scriptural and spiritual videos on this network to learn more about that. But these appointed times are important because they are pointing to not only salvation, but end time prophecy. Now, it's just interesting in so-called 2025, next year, so not this year's appointed times, but next year, if Yahuwah wills for another year, when it comes to captivity and everything, guess what? Trumpets is going to fall on September 23rd, 2025, as of next year, or the evening of trumpets of September 23rd at sundown. Now, isn't it interesting, because on this network, if for those of you who remember, we've done tons of videos when it comes to this date in particular and how we have to watch out for this day. Again, we're not saying anything's going to happen on this day this year or next year, but what we are saying is that you need to pay attention to this stuff. The most notable one is probably this one, where they say, Happy Little Shop of Horrors Day. Remember that movie that came out in like 1986, Little Shop of Horrors? And at the very beginning of the movie, they even tell you, on the 23rd day of the month of September, in an early year of a decade, not too long before our own, the human race suddenly encountered a deadly threat to its very existence. And then if you pay careful attention in the movie, you also see what appears to be an eclipse in that movie. And then you also see a deadly plant that starts attacking everything as well. Now, what's interesting is that there are a ton of movies that also depict this day. Again, you might have to look on your own time and do personal research for that. We've done videos in the past about Hollywood depictions of September 23rd and 923 symbolism everywhere. It's just that requires its own video for its own time. But folks, this stuff is real, because in those other depictions, they show things and portray and depict things like a so-called alien invasion or destruction beginning or an EMP. All of these different things that take place. Again, I'm not saying that that's going to take place this year or next year. However, you have to wonder, why is that the case though? What do they know? Why are they depicting this stuff? And why have this summit on September 23rd, exactly 23 years and 12 days following 9/11? Why is that the case? And speaking of alien invasion, didn't your presidents tell you that that's the threat that we would have to be fighting against, a so-called alien invasion?
In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
So could it be that come time of the end times, and when Shaitan and the devil and those messengers have to fall down to the earth or arts, that they're not going to fall down and look disgusting? They're going to appear as holy ones. They're going to appear as righteous to you. They're going to appear as potentially JC, as Buddha, as Krishna, as all of these other ones. And excuse me for saying those words. They're going to appear as these deities and idols. Why? Because they need to deceive you. Why? Because of Project Bluebeam. Are you seeing how all of this is coming together full circle? Because we've talked about Project Bluebeam on this network as early as 2015 about what? NASA's plan of deception. Because if you really think that they're aliens from some other planet, from some other galaxy, it's time to think again, because the reality is these creatures and entities have been here for a very long time. They've been strategically planning with your government behind closed doors through the UN United Nations in order to deceive the world and in order to blind as many people and try to take as many people to hell with them. But the question is, are you awake and alert and aware of their agendas? Because when the president, whenever that is, comes onto the scene and says, oh no, oh my goodness, we've made contact with aliens and they're coming from some other planet. Everyone help. We have to merge as a new world order. We have to merge as a one world government, but we have to merge together and fight this threat and stop this threat. We have to do this. But will you be deceived? Will you think they're from some outer galaxy? Will you think that so-called meteors and asteroids, when they start falling down, will you think that they're from some other planet? Or will you see that they're actually the judgment of Yahuwah, that they're the hailstones that scripture talks about? And so they're using this event as a ploy in order to help further that agenda. Now, again, we're not saying it's going to manifest this year or next year. We really don't know. But the best thing we can do is seek Yahuwah and his true son Yahusha so that we can be ready for these things, so that we can be prepared for these things, so that we will not be asleep to these things when they start happening, when the chaos starts happening, when the shutdown gets here, when martial law starts, when all of this stuff happens. We will be ready for it indeed. Because again, folks, this is some serious stuff that is going on behind closed doors, even as we speak. But again, for those of you who are awake, alert, and aware, then continue to be awake, alert, and aware at all times. Now, for those of you who are observing the fall appointed times or trumpets, regardless of whenever you're observing it, I pray that you have a wonderful fall appointed times. This is Truth Unveiled here, saying as always, Shalom.